Hello, everybody. This is Erin from Wing Nation. This is going to be our weekly podcast, one of a few that we rotate, and it's going to be called As You Know, Erin. One of the things that I've really enjoyed over the years doing Wing Nation is when a lot of the drivers refer to something on the track, whether it's driving, technical, and they'll say, as you know, Erin, because I obviously have raced in the past. So in those moments, sometimes I want to take the conversation a little bit further and talk a little bit more technical. And sometimes Steve starts to roll his eyes and want to talk about something more fun. So we thought maybe once a month, we'd sit down with a different driver or someone in the industry and maybe get a little bit more technical, talk about safety, talk about parts and pieces, talk about motors, and just, things in general in our sport. So this week, we're going to sit down with Dave Blaney and just talk to him about Sharon Speedway, his driving career, driving style, all sorts of questions. So I'm looking forward to starting off this new series. So, Dave, just wanted to catch up with you today. When we do our weekly shows with Steve, sometimes some of the drivers want to get a little technical, and I get really interested in whether it's talking about, pedaling a car or tires or whatever, and Steve is just not keeping up. And I try to keep going down that road. So we decided this year to start this new show where I can get a little bit more technical with the guys, and we can kind of take it any direction you want. We can talk about safety, we can talk about driving, we can talk about tires. I'm not super mechanical, but I know enough to be dangerous. So it's just an interesting kind of side note to Wing Nation. One of the things I think that I wanted to talk to you about, maybe we'll start there, is the difference in driving a sprint car versus a stock car. You've had the opportunity to drive all sorts of different cars throughout your career.
Yeah.
And I found, and granted it's been almost 20 years now since I raced sprint cars, well, 10 years since I raced it all, but in a sprint car, it seemed like there was always more room for a driver to carry the car a little bit. Like a good driver could possibly, it might not be like that anymore. Competition's so stiff and there's such great equipment out there. But just talk about the difference in that sense between a stock car and a sprint car.
Yeah, you're right about a driver carrying it a little bit more because you can, in a wing sprint car anyway, you can, there's a point where you can run them out of control somewhat and catch them all the time. That's how you drive them most of the time is past the grip level, right?
Yep.
And just catch it or follow it to the cushion or whatever. And so it makes more of a, I don't know, it's kind of a momentum thing at times where you're sliding it just to get, slide it to some traction to go.
Yeah.
And stock cars are, nothing like that. The car's got to be in a certain spot and, keeping grip in all the wheels and completely different.
And when you're pedaling like a sprint car, when I mean by pedaling for some of the viewers, you're using the brake and the gas to kind of keep the car set or exactly where you want it. Did you do that a lot in a stock car? I mean, I was never very successful in a stock car, so whatever I did was probably not right.
Yeah.
But there's so much of that happens in a sprint car, especially when you're trying to run the bottom or trying to keep momentum through the slick. Is that something that you also did in a stock car?
No, I think that was part of my problem in a stock car. A lot of times I didn't coast enough off pedals. Part throttle a little bit, trying to do what I always did, and the part throttle thing kind of just kept the car tight in a stock car sense. And so when I got myself to just, all the time, somebody in my ear, let it roll, let it roll, let it roll. And when you get yourself to do that, that's completely foreign to sprint cars, is letting the car coast with as much speed as you can, how you do with a stock car. So that was probably my biggest hurdle, was figuring that out.
And when you first, you had a lot of success in sprint cars. You won Knoxville Nationals, World of Outlaw Championship, and then you came to stock cars. Did you have any pavement experience at that point?
No stock car, maybe Silver Crown on pavement, maybe some sprint car races a little bit, but no. Did all that at way too late in life, actually, and it didn't turn out as well as it maybe could have. But
well, you had a pretty decent career.
Yeah, it was still good. Good experience all around.
So when your stock car career started to wind down, what was I know your family's always been involved in Sharon Speedway, but what was the motivation to get back into sprint car? Was it something that was always in the back of your mind, or was it something that just evolved?
I can't say it was always in the back of my mind. When I went NASCAR racing, that was maybe 98. I bet it was at least 8 years before I even ever got back in a sprint car for the first time. 2006 maybe. Yeah, and then when it was winding down in stock cars, why not? I had a shop, and Eric Bergen was helping me, so we'd go racing a little bit, and it's been just a little bit of racing. Actually, in 2018, I ran full time with All Stars, but other than that, it's been let's go race this week or not.
Yeah. When you look back at your career, obviously a NASCAR career was successful. It provides a wonderful living. It can afford you to do a lot of things. But when you look back at as far as any, obviously still currently driving sprint cars, comparing the cars, like just from a driving standpoint, what's more fun?
Both when you're
Really?
running for a win.
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
Yeah. But
It's
if you had to
whatever.
like go test for a day.
It just depends what you're into.
Yeah.
The Cup car, there's challenges. How can we make the car a little better here, there? How can I do it better? Same in a sprint car. It's just what your mindset is at the moment. If I had to pick, yeah, I'd probably pick sprint cars, but
Yeah.
either way.
Yeah. So, you know, we look at sprint cars, and it's one of the forms of motorsports that really hasn't changed all that much. When you look at NASCAR, the evolution of different cars they've gone through, the rule book, whatever, sprint cars is starting to get a little bit more and more of a rule book and a little more. But just talk about that. I mean, sprint cars are really basic machines. And I know one of the things you like to do was tinker and do a little engineering and come up with different parts and pieces. But just talk about sprint cars as far as that is. Like the sport is still pretty basic in many ways.
It is, surprisingly so, because the rule book is not real tight. There's a lot of options to, as far as width, length, just basic dimensions of the car. There's lots of room to work. And I'm going to say the basic dimensions as far as wheelbase, width, height, all that kind of stuff has been the same since the mid 80s, at least. So it is strange, but all the pieces, parts, you know, everything is so much better these days, performance-wise, reliability-wise, and a lot of it I think is the wing. You just kind of live on that wing, and you try to make different cars where you think you can. Okay, this car can make more traction, maybe, but it's still an overall. Maybe you have more traction at corner exit, but you still have to make an entry and make a lap, and so it doesn't always translate. The tried, proven type cars, it's hard to get away from them. You can make little gains. You'd think somebody could kind of redesign it a little bit and make a decent gain, but it's hard.
Perfection isn't easily achieved. It takes hard work, dedication, and perseverance. Through their commitment to excellence, Sage Fruit Company has been supplying customers with the best tree fruit in the Pacific Northwest for over 3 generations. They work hard on the farm, in the packing facilities, and with their retail partners to provide consistent, high-quality apples and pears all year long. Look for Sage Fruit at your local grocer.
Yeah. What are some of the, I mean, obviously we always talk tires, shocks, wings, motor, of course. Where do you see people playing with the most right now? Is it still all of those things?
I think shocks more than anything. Shocks and maybe some in that area anyway. I think the engines are very good at the moment. I think there's an art to detuning them at times for slick tracks, and I think everybody's into that somewhat. Tires, you're locked into tires mainly with a spec tire. So for me, the wing is the biggest piece of equipment you have to go fast. You take that wing off that car, it's 3 seconds a lap slower. So for my cars, I try to optimize what the wing can do for me, and that's how I look at it. So
when you're like something, say working towards this year, you know, I know tires are like, people are concerned about a shortage of tires, and even parts in general right now are concerned. People worried about getting their engines redone this season. But what are some areas you mentioned shocks, but where do you mentioned detuning motors? Where are some places that you feel like you can still focus on within the rules? You mentioned wing, I guess.
There's tons of room in the setups and sprint cars between, you know, height of the car, width of the car, spring rates, all that kind of stuff. A huge amount to gain, and I was part of it for a long time. And once you get in a little box that your car runs well in, you kind of stay there. You don't venture too much either way. But if you look at it in reality, if you go to most tracks, you know, let's say it's a 16-second qualifying lap. It could be a 20-second lap in the feature.
Yeah.
Well, that thing that ran good in a 16-second track is not going to be that great in a 20-second track. So I think big changes sometimes are risky, but can prove way better than just kind of staying with what you got.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's gains in that, just having more options with your race car as far as when it's, and there's lots of guys that have options, especially guys that run, maybe they run Port Royal every week or Williamsburg or something.
Same place.
They have a setup for this speed track, right down the line. And that's how you have to do it with a sprint car, where the track changes speed so much. And that's where I try to work at Sharon. It's super slick, super slow, and it's a good place to work on that kind of stuff, set up stuff for slick racetrack.
Yeah, when you talk about like high speed tracks, I've been far out of it where I don't really know what teams do. But you look at NASCAR, and you have short track cars, you have speedway cars, and again, I've been out of that for long enough. I don't know exactly, because I know there's a whole new car coming, whatever. But why do sprint car teams? Is it travel logistics, or is there really not that much advantage to, like, on a short track, maybe running a shorter wheelbase car versus going to Knoxville and bigger tracks? And like, do you see where, I know some of the guys, at least motor wise, will run different motors for different tracks, but why do you not see them doing more specifically for tracks? Is it because every track, the dirt is going to be different? There's variables to every single track, I guess, you go to.
Yeah, I think logistics is a lot of it. Having, if you're a local racer, maybe your track will call for a shorter car, longer car, whatever, and you'll stick with it. But if you're a full-time racer and you're racing every type of racetrack, you're going to pick something is going to be okay everywhere, and just live with that and learn what to do with that in all situations. So, it's right now I think sprint car racing is cooler than it's ever been, as far as the competition on the racetrack, the parts pieces. You can buy everything you need. Mm-hmm. You don't have to make anything yourself, which there's an argument for that's not great. But the other side of it is it's really good pieces and parts, really reliable. Yeah. And you can't beat it.
You talk about the competitiveness of sprint cars right now, and dirt track racing in general is kind of booming. Short track racing in general, but really wing sprint car racing. I mean, you think about the number of USAC guys now that are coming over to run wing sprint cars, and whether it's what you and Tony and Casey started to do 10 or 15 years ago by supporting Sprint Car World, whatever it may be. Why do you think that's happened? Is it because it's just true racing, and you can go on a Saturday night and you can watch now on streaming, and it's quick, it's not there for 3 days? Right. What do you think is behind the awesome craze for us, people who have loved it all along?
For racers, it's money. I mean, you race for a lot of money racing wing sprint cars. I don't care if you're racing full-time outlaws, full-time all-stars, even if you sat in Pennsylvania all year long and race there's a lot of money to be raced for. So I think that's a big point for the USAC guys to go do it. But it's just such good racing right now. And I think the streaming part of it has made a world of difference. Yeah. Just put so many new eyeballs on the sport. And we know at Sharon, there's new people. We see new people all the time, especially World of Outlaw race last year at Sharon. It was incredible how many people were new that we hadn't seen before. And that's a good thing.
That's interesting. Like, from your perspective, you're a track owner or part of a track. You've heard so many people in the beginning of streaming say it was a negative. You're going to stream it, people aren't going to come sit in the grandstands. But I feel like over time, that seems to have been negated, that you're seeing new people, there's more eyeballs on it, and it's actually bringing people, oh, they're actually in town, I'm going to go watch them. Mm-hmm. Is that, I mean, it's neat to hear that it's supported by track owners. Yeah,
I think that's exactly it. And we were the same way at Sharon, which way to go on that, but it's overwhelming now, especially maybe with a mix of social media that everybody can talk through that. And so I always talk about word of mouth with our Speedway. Well, it's not mouth anymore, it's what you type, right? Yeah. But it's huge. What happens, good or bad, it can affect you both ways, but it's huge.
How involved are you on the day-to-day stuff for Sharon?
No, not much day-to-day.
Not day-to-day, but like the business side of it, the planning, the scheduling.
Yeah, my wife and I, and Dave Willoughby runs the track up there, and his wife. So the four of us, they're up there day-to-day, running it all year, and but my wife and I have, are in it too. So
I mean, it seems like in the last few years, you guys are, Outlaws and the SRX race. I know we mentioned earlier coming to your track this year. You guys really seem to are leading to bigger events, and it seems to be growing. I hear more and more people. I mean, I remember going to the Sharon Nationals years and years ago, and it wasn't as big of an event.
How old are you?
I'm old. Yeah, your brother beat me by not much, and I'm still mad about it. He started on the pole. You can't be part of the track and start on the pole. I had to start like 6th or 7th.
Wow.
Sorry, I didn't forget that. No, I do love that track, but yeah, as far as track ownership going, and you're talking about the sport being so healthy, it's got to be kind of a good time to be involved. You've seen the sport go through different phases, but right now Sharon seems pretty healthy.
It is, and you know, Sharon's a little small facility, I'll say, compared to looking at Knoxville or Eldora. So we can't put giant crowds in, but we can have World of Outlaw races and All-Star races, and honestly, I don't even know how long it's been now, 4 years, 5 years. We reshaped the track a little bit and different dirt. Steve Steinley from Port Royal came in, helped us. We've been friends a long time, and that turned it around. I mean, it completely turned it around as far as racer support, fan support. We have and Dave and the crew up there learned how to prepare it to where it's slick, smooth, no dust, very little dust, and most of the time really good racing all over the track. So when you can have that, my word of mouth thing gets good, and it just keeps growing.
When you say it turned things around, was it immediately noticeable, or like, you know, obviously the racers appreciate that because a consistent track that makes, and the fans appreciate a consistent track and good racing. But how quickly did you see that when you put a new surface on it?
Yeah, immediately.
That's awesome.
Word of mouth was way better, and it's not for everybody. It's slick and it's slow. You know, we could run, if the track's sticky, you'll run 13-second laps at Sharon. Well, most races are 1 in the 17 or 18-second bracket. But in my mind, it doesn't matter if they're racing 2 or 3 wide for the win. And but some fans don't dig it, but most do. So it's a different thing.
Yeah, well, I feel like slick races usually provide a good race. You know, even if it might be slower, that's usually a better race. Yeah. And I want to hit a little bit on the safety side of sprint car racing, which isn't always fun to talk about. Some people, you know, shy away from it. But you're a track owner and a racer. We talked about how sprint cars haven't really evolved, and unfortunately, our sport has seen some fatalities in recent years and some serious injuries. What areas, I mean, obviously like the seat is something of concern, and people getting hit with the you know, the torque tube and whatnot. But where are areas that, do you see something in a sprint car where you think, man, this is something I wish they'd mandate, or this is something that they need to work on?
Nothing that leaps out at me. It is, from my main career of sprint cars in the 90s, you know, the seats of today are so much better. This Fiberworks seat from here in Mooresville that I use is incredible. I think it's so tough you can't smash it in. The torque tube can't smash it up into you. The Hans device is huge. Everything's better. You know, and World of Outlaws mandated thicker tubing through the cars. You see way less. You don't see any cars coming apart anymore, really. So the main danger that I see is getting hit by another car. You know, getting speared in the cockpit. So, you know, the fire suppression thing, they're putting out, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Everybody hates change a little bit, but you just can't argue with a safety item. You just can't. And it's not huge
Well, you
money.
think about now the sprint cars, that, you know, the side, you got the side panels like up to here. I mean, depending on how you land, you might really want that fire suppression system. Yeah,
and it's not uncommon to get knocked out in a sprint car wreck. They're going so fast, the impacts are huge, and I've been there. And if you know that's both happen, get knocked out, it's on fire, you got a problem.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little weird to me that they don't. Well, they can do whatever they want for rules, but a rock screen is huge for me. I wouldn't run without one. I've seen way too many helmets get split apart and things come through shields, and I've had it happen. So that's a weird thing that some people don't run.
Why do you think they don't mandate it? Because I've never really understood that. I mean, I know there's certain drivers that say they won't race if they have to use one, but I don't understand that. To me, it seems pretty simple.
Yeah, but I remember the first few times, and it was weird. And you seemed like you couldn't focus as well, and they didn't want to change. And I can understand if, hey, it's my head and my opinion, it's my car, and if I don't want to run it, I won't. So I'm going to run one of mine, whatever it falls, it falls.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. So from the track side of things, there's really no governing body that mandates anything for dirt tracks, right? I mean, no one's checking your safety. I know the World of Outlaws are working on things where people go ahead and kind of have maybe a checklist of things they'd like to see, or at least that's what again, I'm kind of removed from it.
At the facility?
Yeah, but how do you see that coming? I feel like, every driver, especially even when it was announced that they were going to do this fire suppression system and the drivers complained, and one of the things was like, well, when are they going to make tracks have to have certain standards? What are your thoughts on that? Obviously, I haven't been to Sharon in years, but I know your safety was always important and your facility was really nice. But and there were tracks I raced at back in the day, and I wondered, wow, something happened to me. This could get real interesting here.
Yeah, I do think most tracks now realize that they have to take care of that. I think even in the last decade, a lot of promoters just trying to stay alive and not so the catch fence or this guardrail or this Jersey barrier wasn't really a concern to them, and rightfully so. So the sanctioning body getting involved, I know Tony Stewart was kind of spearheaded getting involved with racetracks, and it's a good thing. We have a great fire crew, I think, at Sharon, which we think is important. Could our guardrail catch fence thing be better? Yes, it could.
Yeah.
But it is a good thing to at least take care of the obvious. You can't have Jersey barriers with a gap in them where you can spear right into it. So the obvious things nowadays are taken care of, and it's progress. Right?
Yeah, and when you look at a sanctioning body, like think of the NHRA, obviously NASCAR, they have a traveling safety crew that goes with them. To me, that would be something that would be really neat to see some of these. As our sport is growing and there is more money involved and more sponsorship and there's a lot more we can put into it, I think that would be something neat to see. Would you agree with that? Where
yes.
some people are trained to cut the car open the proper way and to remove a driver properly,
Yes, it would, no doubt, if they could make that happen. But I think even now, I think the All-Star group and the World of Outlaw group, if they go to a track and they see something, they'll talk to the promoter about it, and hopefully next time they come back, it's fixed. So there is a dialogue, I think, and it's continually going to get better. But yeah, having a crew would be a huge leap forward. Yeah.
Now, going back to when we first started chatting, I think before we even started recording, you talked about just running a handful of races. 6 races at Sharon, you said you had on your schedule. Why only 6, and do you think you'll add more or just see how things go?
Well, my whole team consists of 1 car and maybe 2 engines this year. I'm going to upgrade the 2 from 1, so I don't have much stuff. And I like going to Sharon. So there's 6 good races there. There's 4 All-Star races, 2 outlaw races, and we'll just see how it goes from there. I went to Eldora last year with big hopes of running good there in the slick, and it didn't work out very good. Qualified good, and then in the slick where I thought we would shine, we were terrible. So we think we've narrowed that down to something in the car, and the driver sucks at big tracks. Maybe you'll edit that out. I don't know.
You mentioned it's not as easy as you get older to race and keep up. What makes you think that? I mean, you won a race at your track last year with the World of Outlaws. You're doing all right, but what is it that you think in your mind as you get to be? Is it your perception? Is it your timing? Is it all of those things?
Yeah, Sharon's a great equalizer, right? It's slow and slick, and all you do is make your car do all the work, and you got a shot. So,
well, I'm pretty sure there's some driver input, but sure.
Well,
pretty sure I could do it.
Get my car.
Don't tempt me. Don't tempt me.
I don't know what it is. There's something between the eyes and the brain that just kind of goes away, and I can't explain. I think when I was younger, if the cushion was over there, I could be looking here, still be an inch of where I needed to be. I could just do it all. Now I have to be staring at it. It's just not the same.
Perfection isn't easily achieved. It takes hard work, dedication, and perseverance. Through their commitment to excellence, Sage Fruit Company has been supplying customers with the best tree fruit in the Pacific Northwest for over 3 generations. They work hard on the farm, in the packing facilities, and with their retail partners to provide consistent, high-quality apples and pears all year long. Look for Sage Fruit at your local grocer.
Now, you ran a full season 2018, and you've run a decent amount. Does it help when you're doing it more often, or do you just still notice like things like that in general?
It doesn't help. It's just more frustrating and more
More
frustrating.
pressure, more frustration, all the things.
So we'll focus on something I can maybe do, right?
Yeah,
So
that's awesome.
it's I don't know. It's a strange thing, and you see some guys don't seem to struggle with it, and some guys do, and it's odd.
Interesting. So we've covered a little bit about a track owner, racer. Now I want to talk about the dad of a successful racer. How many of Ryan's events do you usually get to? Most of them, or I mean, how do you balance all this?
Well, before all this issue, the last year or two, maybe half of them.
Yeah.
Not that many I have to fly to. If I can drive to it, I go. But,
yeah.
And well, a few years ago, I was running sprint cars a lot and missed some, but yeah, if I feel like I can see a lot at the racetrack, I go. If I feel like I can see more on TV, I stay home.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's easy.
Has he ever gone in a sprint car?
When he was young, a few times, really young.
Okay. I remember we asked him about it once.
Yeah, 14, 15. He drove this little limited car at Sharon one night, just hopped in it and almost won. He had trouble, and he went and we were practicing my car, I think at Gastonia at that Carolina track. And he went with us one night, and he'd been racing. He was 15 probably. So he's watching me run around a racetrack and running hard, right? So he gets in this thing, and he thinks he can just run just as hard. And I just, honestly, I watched him run 2 laps, and I just turned and started walking toward the trailer. I knew it was going to happen.
Oh, boy.
I was just waiting for the bang. And so somehow the motor slowed down, and he drove in the pit area. I'm like, wow. That was frightening. So just way over his head, way too soon.
Wait, so he killed the motor?
No, he just finally slowed down and came in.
Oh, I thought you were like,
no,
okay.
no.
So he didn't wreck.
He didn't wreck. No, it was amazing. So I don't know. Right now, I wish I'd have seen him run a sprint car. I think he could do incredible things in it. He's got some, I don't know what it is, but he's got some hand-eye coordination that is off the charts.
Really?
Yeah.
So when you see Kyle Larson obviously still run a lot of sprint cars, Christopher Bell, and even Chase has now been doing some more dirt stuff. Does Ryan have any interest in dabbling a little bit more?
I think he does, but he knows that that's not what he came from.
Yeah.
You know, Larson, Bell, that's all what they came from.
Yeah.
So it's easy to go back. Oh, he would have to go and learn it.
Chase, which, yeah.
Yeah, well, Chase is just having fun with it.
Yeah.
Because he didn't come from it. And so that's tough when you got to go back and learn it. And the team, the Penske group is not keen on going and doing much of that stuff either. So, which I think is fine.
Yeah. So when you're watching Ryan, and I'm sure it's probably gotten easier over time, but I've learned even myself, my daughter riding horses or whatever, like I am a nervous wreck. And when you're driving and you're the one competing, you're so focused on what you're doing. It's just all fun and games, but it's not easy to be a parent watching. Does it get better?
Yes, it gets better.
Even like when they're at Talladega and Daytona and stuff.
I don't like those at all.
Yeah.
It was fun when I did it. It's not
exactly.
fun. I was worried to death when he's doing it. But that's the only tracks. The rest of them, I don't seem to have any problem. And even though I was never really worried too much that he'd get hurt or was nervous about that. I don't know why, but that wasn't ever much of it.
But even like, even for me, I guess I'm like, it's a little bit of the competitiveness too. Like my daughter's like in the entry classes to horses, and I'm like, and obviously Ray and I are both there, ridiculously competitive. We're like, we just want her to have a good, successful event. And then they announced that she finishes 3rd, and we're like, what the heck? She wasn't 3rd. She should. I'm like, oh my gosh, we gotta tone it down. So yeah.
Well, we went through the whole kid racing thing from 8 years old, so you quickly learned. And I wasn't that competitive with him early. It's just more about learning and making sure he learned. If I saw something, so you got to work on this. So if we learned it that night, that was a good night.
Yeah.
No matter what happened.
Yeah.
So more of a learning thing.
Yeah. Well, maybe I need to take some lessons from you.
Good luck. It's a struggle.
So, before we end, is there any topic in sprint cars that you think that, I don't know, that is something up for discussion, whether it be safety, whether it be tire compounds, or if you would love to see the tire rule opened up? I don't know, like anything. Is there anything that you would like to see happen in the sprint car world in the next year, 6 months?
I don't know. I think it's going in a great direction right now. And you say something about the tires, and I wasn't up for it too much when they first come out with the Spec tire. And I understand the Spec tire for the money side of it, but then I don't know how to say it, but the tire got a little, it's much, much, much different than it is as far as the construction and how stiff it is. So, but now I think it's the greatest thing ever.
Really?
Honestly, I think it's made the race cars harder to drive, harder to get hooked up, harder to make them handle right. So it's kind of equalized. It's not like before the Spec tire came in. I think you saw a lot of races won from the front row, just leader gone. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen anymore. And I think the tire is part of it. I really do. They're hard to deal with right now.
Is that have something to do with the sidewall? And didn't people talk about is it softer or is it stiffer sidewall?
No, it's very soft, and it ends up being on the racetrack being really narrow and folded under the car, and hard to deal with, which I think has ended up being a good thing.
So if you start on the pole, you're not getting all that extra traction or whatever, and it's equalizing.
Yeah, I think it's just taking away a bunch of traction. Now you have to deal with it, and in the wing cars, if you got traction and with all the downforce, you're gone. So.
Is that something you've seen really change in sprint cars? We always talked about dirty air in NASCAR, but obviously in sprint cars it's a big thing. And it seemed to get, like you said, a few years ago, that if you started on the front, you were just gone, and that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. But is that something that you have seen get trickier over time, is the dirty air with sprint cars?
It just depends how fast you're going. The faster you're going, the more it compounds everything. So I know even at Eldora, even on the start of a race at Eldora, you're going pretty fast there. So even coming off turn 4 to the green flag, if you're starting clearing the back, your car is wanting to tip over. You have no air on your car at all.
That makes turn 1 a little interesting.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing. So, but the slower the cars go, the slicker the track, it kind of goes away.
Yeah.
Somewhat. It's always there, though.
And over your entire career, what was the most? What's your biggest accomplishment? We'll stay in sprint car racing. Was it Knoxville? Was it the championship? Was it Kings Royal? What would you say is the top accomplishment?
I don't know. A couple Kings Royal wins. It was Eldora's an Ohio track. I was from Ohio, and that was always a big thing for the Ohio guys to go there run good. Back then, Hodgefield, Kenny Jacobs, and
that's when Eldora was like.
Yeah, Jack Hewitt. There was a bunch of us from Ohio that wanted to win all the races there, and getting a couple of those was good. And there was a point in it was about the last 5 years I raced with Kenny Woodruff working on the car. We won a lot of races there between Kings Royals or big ones or whatever. Yeah. And that was fun.
That's awesome. And that was when Eldora wasn't necessarily always dry slick to the top, and it seemed to, I don't know, maybe it's my imagination, but it looked like it had a little more banking back in the day.
It did. It had more banking in the top lane. I think I ran there for 10 years and didn't make 2 laps on the bottom in 10 years. Yeah. You just didn't if you wanted to have a chance. So, but now you can. The racing's better now, but it was cooler before. It's better now.
Yeah, it was cool when there was a big old curb up there. Yeah, I was a little intimidated the first time I went there. I'll never forget. Well, I appreciate your time. I mean, I could sit here and chat sprint cars with you all the time and or for a lot longer, but I appreciate you coming in, catching up, and look forward to you running more than 6 races, I'm guessing. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, in a successful year at Sharon.
Thank you.
So how about you? How many races you plan on doing this year?
6 for sure.
That's it?
There's 6 good ones at Sharon.
Yeah.
After that, it'll be see how it goes.
Yeah.
So, we'll see.
Why so little? Just,
Yeah. I don't know. I like Sharon.
I like Sharon too.
And I don't know. It's just depressing when you get my age.
Is it?
You can't race very good. So, Sharon, kind of an equalizer.
All right, well, we might save this conversation for the show. This sounds like it could be interesting. All right, cool. So, I'm going to intro Dave after. Okay.
Yep. Where am I supposed to be looking? Anywhere? Whatever.
Just a little conversational. All right.